Hello everyone and welcome to Mochi Doki Mochi. This is episode 10 and today is going to be a bit heavy on the shoujo manga. It's what I've been mostly reading this period anyways, because I've been working on some videos for the main channel about shoujo manga and mangaka who make shoujo manga. But yeah, there will always be some josei, seinen and shonen manga sprinkled in there as well. Now having said that, let's start off with some josei. Like I said in the last episode, I would be reading that messy ass manga by Batan, and I ended up doing so. So for those who might not have listened or watched episode 9, this is a josei manga called Kemutai ane to Zurui Imouto. It also has an English title which is Annoying and Cunning Sisters. The story is about the two Togo sisters, older sister Jun and younger sister Ran. From the start of the manga, it's pretty clear that Ran and Jun were never really close as kids, with Ran having a history of taking things that were actually Jun's. It started with Ran taking Jun's toys, and as they grew older, it turned into her clothes, earrings, hair clips, etc. And according to Jun, this type of behavior has led Ran to completely derail her life, and that is because Ran is now married to Ritsu, and Ritsu was Jun's boyfriend first. Somehow, Ran managed to break them up and started dating Ritsu right after that. This betrayal led Jun to break contact with the two of them, telling Ritsu that they should just go and die together. And so they don't speak. They haven't in 8 years now, until their mother passes away from an illness and they both attend her funeral. Jun at the funeral tells her aunt that she intends to move into her mother's home as she still feels quite attached to the place. And so after the funeral, she goes over to start cleaning up, but she finds that quite a bit has already been done. She assumes that her aunt helped her out, and so she tries to rest for a while. But soon afterwards, the front door opens, and guess who it is? Ran and Ritsu! Ta 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 ta! Ran is like, yeah, we want to live here. We already have gone through the cancellation procedure of our old home, but there's an extra room here, so you're welcome to stay if you like. And Jun is not having this at all. She's like, why the heck would I ever want to live here with you? I will never come back. But rather quickly, Jun backtracks. She thinks about all of the things Ran has taken from her, including the person who mattered the most to her, Ritsu. And she decides that she's had just about enough of her sister's behavior. She walks back to the pair and tells Ran that if she so selfishly wants to live in this house, then Jun herself can do so too. And so that's how the three of them end up living together. Boy, oh boy, this is one of the messiest manga I have ever read, and I have so far enjoyed every minute of it. At the end of the first volume, Batan writes in the postscript about how she came to write this manga. Essentially, she thought, sisters, that's good. Women who fight, that's also good. And yeah, human instincts that surpass ethics, yeah, that's good. Of course, the story is not as simplistic as that. The manga is a complex story about heavily flawed people making very questionable choices. And I thought it was so well done. This manga really draws its strength from its characters. Batan makes sure that the reader spends enough time with each of these three characters so that you really come to understand how they all ended up in this situation. Take for instance Ran, who is incredibly easy to dislike. My gosh. It's like she lives in order to make Jun's life as awful as possible. Throughout the manga, you really get to understand why she is the person she is. Ran by nature seems to be a very needy person, someone who seeks a lot of external validation in order to feel good about themselves. Using flashback, the manga shows how Ran's mother clearly preferred Jun over her, and it's slowly revealed as to why exactly that was the case. Now Ran feels extremely rejected by her mother and starts developing feelings of jealousy and resentment towards June, who herself up until this day seems to be completely unaware of how the dynamics between her sister and mother were. It's evident that these negative feelings that Ran has towards Jun run extremely deep, because despite Ran having everything she wants in life, good friends, a good job, a great reputation, and a husband she took from Jun, she says that still, whenever she looks at Jun, those same feelings from when she was younger return. So this type of insight is provided for all three main characters, which made it very easy to understand how things turned out the way they did, as well as the chaos the three of them are heading towards. It did, however, feel as if Jun was the character the manga focuses on the most. I also felt that she was the most relatable, but only at the very start, because after the premise is set and they all start living together, things start to get really spicy. Especially in the second volume, we learn about how exactly Ran and Ritsu got together and how that in a sense left Ritsu and Jun with a lot of unresolved feelings, which are now starting to manifest again. Overall, this manga has just been so interesting and fun to read, and I'm really excited to continue with it. I read the first 2 volumes because that was everything that was available at the time. The third volume was set to come out on the 13th of December, which is a couple of days ago from me filming. So I will definitely be picking up that one. I don't have anything else to say about this manga other than what I've already said before about other works of Batan. It's just really pretty and well done, and I would highly recommend it. I also read the shoujo manga Natsu no Tobira by Takemiya Keiko. This one right here. So Takemiya is the same mangaka behind the Andromeda Stories manga. Maybe I should put it here somewhere. Bloop. Bloop. Okay, so yeah, Takemiya is the same mangaka behind the Andromeda Stories manga. I talked about its anime adaptation back in episode 6, I believe. Yeah. So I initially thought that this volume was just the entire one-shot, but it turns out that it's a collection of short stories with Natsu no Tobira counting about 70 pages. Also, the translation, but not the official one, of the title is The Door Towards the Summer, or something like that. So yeah, the story centers around a group of 14 and 15-year-old schoolboys who spend their summer together at their boarding school in France. You have Marion, who is the leader of the group. He is admired by all of the other students. He's smart, strong, and many girls find him attractive. His current thing is that he's currently really into rationalism, which is a practice where your actions and opinions are based on reasons and knowledge instead of religion and emotions. There's also Claude, who is secretly in love with Marion, but hides this by acting as if he has a crush on Ledania, who is kind of like the belle of the town. Then finally you have Lind and Jacques, who both have an actual crush on Ledania. Also, I should note that Ledania actually likes Marion. Now one day the boys are hanging out, they're bantering and having a drink at the local tea house when all of a sudden this fight breaks out next to them because of Ledania, like between 2 guys, like someone proposed to Ledania. But in any case, Marion manages to break up this fight by challenging one of the men that was in the brawl to a duel. So for this duel, they have to stand on the train tracks as a train approaches them from behind. The duel is won by the last person who jumps off the tracks. Marion uses his rationalism superpowers and wins, but jumps so late that the train makes an emergency stop. One of the people who disembarks from the train is a beautiful woman, and she thanks him for stopping the train since her villa is nearby, and so she can now walk home from there. She gives him a kiss on the lips, which, seeing Marion's reaction, seems to be his first one, as it shakes him to his core. Later on, Marion receives a letter from Ladanya, which says that she will wait for him at the tea house every day, I guess to confess her love so that they can get engaged. But, seeing how emotions are supposedly not his thing, Mario goes to Ladanya to turn her down, and she responds with a slap in the face. At the time of this event, it's raining, and Marion runs away in the rain and passes out eventually somewhere on the floor, becoming completely soaked. Now, the lady from before, from the villa, somehow manages to find him and brings him back to her home. It turns out that this woman is called Sarah, and she is married to a count, but she also operates as a high-class prostitute for upper-class men. She has taken a liking to Mario and is trying to take care of him now that he has a fever. She's also trying to sleep with him, which Mario tries his utmost best to resist. He doesn't even want her to touch him, but then she gives this whole speech about how his life doesn't only belong to him, it belongs to other people as well, like his parents and friends, and since she knows him as well, his life belongs to her too. So eventually she manages to basically wear him down to the point that he's completely disarmed, after which she takes his virginity. This changes Mario completely, and he's now supposedly in love with Sarah, and this manages to completely shatter the friend group. Claude attempts to take his own life, but when Mario finds him, Claude tries to SA him. Mario, however, manages to overpower him, and Claude, after that, takes his own life. Sarah ends up breaking up with Marion after her husband arrives back from a trip, and he doesn't seem to care all that much about the affair. As for Jacques and Lind, they end up having a duel over Ladanya, and in the process of Mario trying to stop them, he gets shot, but he ends up surviving. In the end, Marion and Lind never return to the boys' school, with Jacques being the only one to do so, and he also ends up getting engaged to Ladanya. So this is a heck of a story, and I can definitely see why people were really shocked by it in the 70s. After finishing the manga, I was left feeling just very confused. I didn't understand the point of the story. I love my dramatic shoujo, but this was a bit too much for me for, just 70 pages, and I ended up not enjoying it. I mean, you have Marion losing his virginity to an adult prostitute, Claude taking his own life, and Jacques and Lind almost killing each other over a girl. It was all just a bit too grim for me. What's more is that Takemiya's thoughts on the manga also didn't help me like this manga more. So it turns out that at the end of this volume, there's this postscript by Takemiya in which she kind of explains what the stories mean and just how she feels about them. And according to Takemiya, Marion was not supposed to be the hero of this story, but rather her goal when drawing this manga was to depict the way in which people create their destinies in a world that was centered around Marion. So actually everyone is supposed to be a main character, since it's all about how their destinies are not predetermined, but rather they are defined by their own thoughts and actions. And it's also about how these thoughts and actions clash with those of others. What in particular stood out to me in this postscript was that she describes Sarah as her ideal woman, as she has the ability to understand anyone's life. And I find that very interesting, because I read Sarah as a vile pedophile who managed to wreck the lives of a host of people and didn't really seem to care all that much about that. Yeah, but I don't know. Like, she literally was the catalyst for the death of one boy and the complete dissolution of a friend group. So it's hard for me to understand how being this reckless is supposed to be a signifier of an ideal woman. So yeah, there's that, I guess. Now, this next one is a shonen slice of life manga called Kujima Utaeba Ie Hororo, and it's being drawn by Kono Akira. I believe the title translates to when Kujima sings in the house, it goes Hororo. So Hororo is onomatope for the cry of a wild bird or the sounds of its wings flapping. The manga centers around a boy named Koda Arata who is in his first year of middle school. One day, on his way home, he finds this weird bird-like creature underneath a vending machine fishing for coins. Arata tells the creature that that's illegal, and he responds with, but I wanted to eat Japanese food. And so Arata brings him back home and gives him some food. It's there that we learn that the bird is called Kujima and he belongs to a bird species that secretly lives in the middle of the woods, which is why not many people know about them. Shortly after Kujima was born, however, his parents passed away, and so he was raised as a human by this Russian man called Maxim, who found him as a baby. The thing is that he belongs to a group of migration birds that every winter migrates to Japan. And so after Kujima turned 3, Maxim told him to try and go to Japan for the winter to see if he could try and integrate back into his pack. But Kujima finds that he doesn't understand a word the birds are saying. And in addition to that, they only eat insects. And he's like, bruh, I came all the way from Russia to Japan. I want to eat some delicious food, yo. Some delicious Japanese food. And so Arata tries to make some yakitamago at his house for him, but completely fails, after which Kujima instead makes them some Russian pancakes. Arata's parents end up returning from work, and after some deliberation, because obviously they are freaked out to find this huge talking bird in their house, they allow Kujima to stay at their place for the winter. So that's the premise of this manga. It's all about Kujima spending his winter with this family. I like this manga very much. It's really cute and wholesome. What's funny is that I at first was kind of spooked by Kujima's appearance, but it turns out that he's so cute and funny and also a bit sassy. Like I said before, Kujima is just 3 years old, and throughout the manga you keep getting reminded that this is just a kid that doesn't have a lot of life experience. He's not very self-aware, he still needs to learn how to regulate his emotions and mood. For instance, the time that Arata took him home, Arata first offered him some spaghetti, which freaked Kujima out because he wanted Japanese food. And so he starts going on this wild tangent in Russian, saying things like, "Did you even listen to what I said? I wanted Japanese food!" And he has no clue that he is severely frightening Arata. He also deals with being homesick, as this is his first time being so far away from Maxim and Russia. And it's so sad to see him down. You just really want to console him because he's so adorable. But yeah, my favorite chapter of this first volume was the 4th, in which people in the neighborhood seem to have started noticing a soaking wet ghost with long black hair dressed in white heading towards the mountains in the mornings. Arata's family thinks that these people are actually talking about Kujima, since in the early morning when it's dark, his description matches that of the supposed ghost. Also, Kujima goes to the water every morning to scream like a bird. And so they give him some rules to follow so that people won't find out that he's a bird. The next day, however, Kujima finds out that there actually is a ghost, and he starts screaming, trying to get away from it. And whilst doing so, he manages to break every single rule that was set for him by Arata's parents. I thought this chapter was just the perfect showcase of the humor and quirkiness of this manga. Like I said, it's just really wholesome and a very light-hearted manga I would highly recommend. Now, back in episode 8, I talked about this shoujo horror supernatural mystery manga called Sharakuna KAIKI SHINREI KENMONROKU, which was created by Nagano Akira. At the time, I had only skimmed through the manga, but now I've actually read the entire thing, and I'm here to report that I enjoyed it a lot. So to finally give you the full synopsis, the story centers around Wato Takayuki, who works as an editor for the publishing company Do Iru Shuppan. At the start of the manga, he gets called to the desk of Akechi, who is his, I think, superior. Akechi tells him that the publishing company has lost contact with the author Akechi himself is responsible for. Apparently, 3 weeks ago, this author had sent them a message saying that they had actually finished their manuscript. However, they never heard anything back from him after that. And since Akechi had a rough night out, he wants Wato to go to this author's house to check on him and get a hold of his manuscript. So the name of this author is Sharaku, and when Wato asks what type of work Sharaku makes, Akechi tells him it's ghost stories, and this makes Wato completely freak out. Apparently, ever since he's been young, Wato has had a really hard time dealing with anything scary, and that causes him to faint quite a lot. Akechi, however, gives him no choice to run away, and so this is how he arrives at a creepy-ass looking house in search of Sharaku. He manages to find him there hidden under a huge stack of papers. Sharaku then makes him drive both of them to some unknown location for so-called real-life experience. In the car, he quite frankly tells Wato that he lied about having finished writing his latest manuscript and that he hasn't even written a single page. Apparently, he has been suffering from writer's block, and so he needs some real-life experience in order to get back to writing. After driving for some time, the two men end up at the foot of a mountain at night. However, there's a host of signs there telling them to not enter. Sharaku explains that this mountain is known for the paranormal phenomena that occurs there and that he wants to experience them too so that he can use that as an inspiration for his work. Obviously, Wato is not cool with that, but he ends up tagging along, and it is there where they find the creepiest dude ever, I guess, covered in mud, wearing nothing but a pair of jeans and a tank top in the middle of the night. Ooh. So the creep asks them why they're there and tells them that the mountain is pretty dangerous and that it's just better for them to return. Sharaku then asks him why he's on the mountain, but he only replies with, "Yeah, you better go back." So Sharaku eventually thanks him for his advice and the creep leaves. However, when Wato and Sharaku approach the place the creep was standing, they find bloody handprints, after which Sharaku fervently starts pursuing this creep. Wato and him end up finding the dude in a clearing where he's burying a body. And when he discovers that he's been caught, he's like, well, I guess I gotta kill you guys too. Apparently, however, Sharaku has insane fighting skills and manages to beat the living crap out of this dude. Sharaku is absolutely livid, and not because this creep just tried to kill them. No, that couldn't be the reason, but it's because this creep wasn't like an actual monster. He wasn't like a yokai or a ghost or whatever. Sharaku was so excited to have found a real monster, but it turned out just to be a regular ass murderer. And so he's like kicking him and he's like, "Give my excitement back! Give my excitement back!" He's utterly disappointed. Eventually, in the manga, we learn that the man was a gambler and the person he killed was his friend whom he owed money to. As you can imagine, this was a very unpleasant experience for Vato, and after having been interrogated by the police, he's just happy to be done with his assignment. However, Akechi tells him that he is now the person in charge of Sharaku. Apparently, Sharaku has taken a liking to Vato as he has begun writing again after their excursion. And so that's the premise of the manga. Sharaku and Vato go to all these haunted places in order to find supernatural phenomena. Only the first volume is out, which covers their trip to the mountain as well as them checking out an old abandoned hospital. I am going to have to highly recommend this manga. The golden era of shoujo horror and mystery has long since passed, so it was such a treat for me to stumble upon this one. I love the episodical nature of the manga, where every couple of chapters Sharaku and Wato try to scope out a new supposedly haunted place. It allows for so many different sceneries and types of horrors to occur, and in addition to that, Nagano goes all out trying to give these locations very spooky, creepy vibes. Some of my favorite panels in the manga were those in which Sharaku and Wato arrive at a new place, and it's just this huge panel of the location giving off very ominous vibes, and I felt that set the tone for the manga so well. Another thing that I liked is that you never really know what to expect. In both the mountain and the abandoned hospital, they find some really fricked up stuff, and I actually felt my heart skip a beat, and that's something I love so much about good horror manga. I love the thrill that I get out of reading them. Lastly, I just want to say that I really like both main characters, and I think that the dynamics between the two is really great. They're on the complete opposite side of the spectrum, with Vato being a scaredy pants who is probably afraid of his own shadow, and Sharaku who absolutely relishes in anything related to the macabre and supernatural. Throughout their adventure, they somehow manage to sort of tone each other down, or rather they don't amplify each other's personality, which made the manga not go over the top despite both of them being quite extreme characters. The manga also takes time for them to really develop a relationship. After having gone to the mountain and the hospital, the last chapter in the manga covers Sharaku coming over to Wato's place to hang out. And this is the first time they get the opportunity to get to know each other outside of high-stakes situations. And they seem to really hit it off, which is so fun to see and also a great way to end the first volume, in my opinion. So yeah, I'm really excited to see where the rest of this manga will eventually head towards. Another shoujo manga I read recently is called Anoko no Kodomo. It's the latest manga from Aoi Mamoru, who is known for her shoujo romance manga. Actually, when I was preparing for this podcast, I found out that this manga is receiving an English edition pretty soon. The first volume is going to get published in April next year by Seven Seas Entertainment under the title of My Girlfriend's Child. The story is about a high schooler who is called Sachi. She and her boyfriend Takara have been dating for a couple of years now and have been having sex since they were 15. Now that they're in their last year of high school, they are getting ready to decide what to do after graduation. However, Sachi has been starting to feel a bit different lately. She's been eating a lot more, she tends to feel ill quite often, she's starting to gain weight, and the smell of certain types of food now makes her feel nauseous. As her suspicion of being pregnant grows, she goes off on her own to buy a pregnancy test. She takes the test in the toilet of a restaurant and finds out that it indeed confirms that she is pregnant. Now, so far, 4 volumes of the manga are out, and the first volume covers Sachi finding out the results of the pregnancy test and dealing with that knowledge on her own. And if I were to describe how it felt reading the first volume, I'd have to say that it was utterly gut-wrenching. So much goes through her mind as she tries to figure out what to do. She doesn't know for sure if she can trust the test, and so she goes on the internet to look for more information. And as you can imagine, she just gets bombarded with anything that you can think of with regards to pregnancy. Sachi at the same time is considering the prospects of becoming a teen mother and having to give up on many of the things she had expected to experience in life after finishing high school. She also thinks about how a possible baby would affect Takara, who for most of this volume isn't even aware of any of this, and tells her that he had planned to go to a university that was rather far away. It's very clear that Sachi is struggling and feeling very overwhelmed by this situation, and all of her feelings are amplified through Aoi's amazing skill of storytelling. It's the multiple panels of her face as she's going through the emotions. It's the way in which she removes Sachiko's entire environment as she's sitting in her booth in the restaurant after receiving a positive pregnancy test. That page specifically felt so striking. To me, it perfectly encapsulated that suffocating feeling of being in such a jarring and life-altering situation as a teenager, and the loneliness as well of finding that out on your own. Like, yeah, the storytelling is just so good. I don't even know what else to say. I've only read the first volume, where at the end Sachiko starts to experience the first reactions to her possible pregnancy, but I can tell already that this is just the tip of the iceberg and it's going to get a lot more emotional. Like, I'm so glad that this manga exists, because to me, this is a perfect example of what shoujo has to offer, and I'm so excited for the manga to get an English release as well soon, so that more people can read it. I remember checking out Reddit the other day and seeing a bunch of comments about people complaining how shoujo is so shallow. And I never cease to be stunned by such comments, because the more shoujo I read, the more I get to see the full spectrum of what it has to offer. And what it has to offer is a lot. And it's really sad that just because it's female coded, the assumption is that it doesn't bring anything of artistic value to the table, and that it's all about ooh woo, free wings and guaches. Like, it's not. Shoujo isn't even a genre. There are gruesome and twisted shoujo manga out there that will make your skin crawl, and there are also powerful drama shoujo that will take a hold of your heart. It's hard to see how you can lump all of those together. And of course, every demographic category of manga has its own tropes, but somehow these don't discredit the worth the male categories of shonen and seinen have, unlike josei and shoujo. But yeah, speaking of a great shoujo horror, I read one of Itou Junji's most recent works called Genkai Chitai. It's published in the English under the title The Liminal Zone, and it features 4 short stories. The first one, called Weeping Woman, is about a man and his fiancée who travel to Tohoku up in the north of Japan and decide to randomly stop by this very small town. They hear a loud sobbing and find that there's a funeral going on that has hired a weeping woman in order to cry for the deceased. After encountering this weeping woman, the man's fiancée can't stop weeping herself. It goes on for weeks, and so they end up traveling back to Tohoku to solve the issue, but they end up finding something really unexpected. Then there's the story called Madonna, which is about Maria, a girl who has transferred to this intensely strict Catholic high school. Maria quickly notices that things aren't all that normal there. She sees a girl licking a salt stone in the courtyard. Some students are constantly dazed and have salt leaking out of their ears, and the wife of the principal thinks she is the true Madonna, like a representation of Jesus, his mother. Maria herself is really pretty, and so unfortunately she is noticed by the principal, who instantly takes a liking to her. This, however, aggravates his wife, and so Maria finds herself in this really messed up situation where she's targeted by the principal's wife, and where she also gets dragged into the center of all the dark and ugly things that are happening at this mess of a boarding school. This story was actually my favorite. Towards the end, when the story is reaching its climax, things get completely out of hand, and Itou's drawings, as expected, match that energy. Especially the depiction of the most crazed character was just wild and very well done. Then there's the spirit flow of Aokigahara, which is about a couple that goes to the woods to end their lives since one of them is terminally ill. They, however, manage to find this very weird cave that looks like a dragon that every night has a so-called spirit flow coming out of it. People who enter this spirit flow start to slowly change. Somehow their bodies with every spirit flow ride becomes more and more smooth, and things get taken to the extreme. The final story is called Slumber, and it's about a law student who wakes up every day with memories of killing someone. These murders are real as they are reported on the news, and so as time passes, the idea that he has killed people starts to eat away at him. This one was also really good. The plotline was very well written, and I felt that the twist at the end of the story was just really good. If I were to rate each story in this collection, I would say from most liked to least, it would have to be Madonna, Slumber, Weeping Woman Way, and finally the spirit flow of Aokigahara. The last thing I wanted to mention about Itou is that just a couple of days ago, I found that there's another anime of his work coming out next month called Junji Maniac. I knew this one was coming, but didn't know it was coming this early. Having said that, I'm really excited to watch. I know that a couple of years back they did a similar anime adaptation called Itou Junji Collection, and I remember quite liking it, but I also remember that it was kind of janky at times. I know that there were quite a lot of people that were really disappointed by it. Also, for some reason, Itou's manga has struggled to get good adaptations. There's also this 2011 adaptation of Gyo, which is about sea creatures that somehow managed to get modified in such a way that they now have like these mechanical feet or legs, and as a result they start going on land and start attacking people. The manga of this story is really good. Like I could almost smell the fish stench when I was reading it, but the anime was so bad. I watched it a couple of years ago and I just remember the horrible CGI and laughing a lot. But yeah, who knows how this one will turn out. The director happens to be the same person who also directed the Itou Junji collection anime, and he has done the character design for both as well, which doesn't surprise me because I saw the trailer of Maniac and it looked quite similar to the first adaptation. But yeah, I have been so out of the loop in terms of anime, in particular seasonal anime. For some reason I find it really hard keeping up with a show over a number of weeks. I checked out the list of anime that will be coming out for the winter 2023, or is it 2022? I think winter 2023 season, and I didn't really see anything that instantly tickled my fancy aside from the Itou anime. It seems that a lot of the shows that are airing are sequels as well. So yeah, I don't know. If there's any anime that you are particularly interested in, feel free to leave it in the comment section below because I'd be interested in looking more into that. And now for the question segment of this podcast. Basically, if you have a question for me, or if you want me to give you a tailored recommendation or anything else like that, you can leave a question or comment in the comment section below with the hashtag MDMQ, so Mochi Doki Mochi questions, and I will try and answer them in one of the future podcast episodes. So today's question comes from VVP. What are your favorite genres to read in manga, and which genres do you find yourself reading more? So I would have to say that that's horror, because I've always loved horror since I was a kid. I used to read a ton of horror even before I knew about manga. So, for instance, there's this book series in Dutch called The Griezelbus, so kind of like the creepy bus, and it's about like creepy stuff happening to young kids that go on this school bus. But yeah, I read so much to the point that my mom was getting a bit concerned about me reading about monsters and skellies and stuff. But hey, I turned out pretty well, I think. But yeah, mainly horror, but a genre that I've been wanting to read more is just like romance drama. Actually, I think that's the genre I've been looking for, and I've managed to find a couple in the past weeks. I've also been trying to read one manga every single day, and from there I do find that I've been reading more shoujo. So, but that's also not a genre, right? So yeah, I hope that answers your question. Thank you very much. And I think this is the end of the podcast. As always, thank you so much for watching and or listening. And yeah, I hope to see you soon in another episode. Cheers.